Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The suspect in the UnitedHealth murder was apprehended, revealing Obamacare as the possible motive, and the real story of the fall of the Assad regime in Syria is coming to light. Okay, let's get into it. The suspect in the shooting death of the UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson has been formally charged with murder. The suspect is 26-year-old Luigi Mangione from Maryland. According to the NYPD, Mangione was riding on a Greyhound bus on Monday morning when he got off at Altoona and he entered a local McDonald's. He was spotted after employees recognized him as resembling a photo of the suspect released by police. Then, the Pennsylvania State Police shared the images of Luigi at the McDonald's eating hash browns just before his arrest. Mangione is from Towson, a city near Baltimore, Maryland. He is obviously a smart guy with a high IQ. He graduated from Gilman School in Baltimore in 2016, and he was the student valedictorian at his graduation ceremony. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a master's degree in computer science. He specialized in artificial intelligence. During his time on campus, he served as a teaching assistant and director of the recitation committee. He was working as a data engineer for a technology company in Santa Monica for 4 years. According to the police, some people have commented on his calmness when he committed the crime, and many people were under the impression that he was a professional killer. But when the police approached him, he was afraid. According to the Associated Press, Mangione began shaking when the police asked if he had just been in New York recently. CNN noted that when two officers approached him in the McDonald's, he was staring at a laptop while wearing a mask and a beanie. The officers asked him if he had been to New York City, and Mangione became quiet and started to shake. When the police asked him for identification, he gave them a fake New Jersey ID. This is the same fake ID that Mangione used to check into a New York City hotel a few days before Thompson's murder. Law enforcement found at least 4 fake IDs on Mangione. New York Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said that Mangione was carrying a phantom gun, which is a gun that is assembled from parts and therefore is untraceable. He was also carrying a silencer, which is consistent with the crime scene evidence. The charging document says that the phantom gun was produced by a 3D printer. The former New York police lieutenant said that the suspect's behavior showed that he was overconfident in his plans.
I mean, the fact that he still had the weapon on him, he had all this material on him, it just shows how arrogant he really is in this crime. The fact that everybody thought he was a professional killer, not by any means. It's his arrogance and it's his the way he committed the crime, and then what he did afterwards with the backpack and everything. He just kept showing everything. He threw everybody off. Everybody thought he may have tossed that weapon into the lake, but yet he has it on him.
Mangione's publicly available social media data shows that he does not appear to have shown significant animosity towards UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, but he clearly wanted to send a message to the insurance industry.
The fact that he wrote what he did on the shell casings that he knew police would find, the fact that if he wanted to get rid of the backpack, he could have put it in any one of 10,000 trash bins anywhere in New York City, and likely that nobody would have ever found it. But he left it in Central Park with monopoly money inside it. Was that some kind of message that he was sending as well? And then, as you point out, the fact that he still had the weapon with him and the manifesto in his pocket when he was nabbed in Altoona.
The San Francisco police also revealed that his mother, Kathleen Mangione, reported him missing on November 18th. Mangione's family released a statement in the wake of his arrest, saying that they are devastated by their son's alleged behavior. They also sent their condolences to Brian Thompson's family. Mangione appeared to be carrying a 3-page handwritten manifesto expressing dissatisfaction with the healthcare system when he was arrested. This may have been the suspect's motivation for committing the crime. Since last week, the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson has triggered social media complaints against insurers. CBS News medical contributor Celine Gounder said during a show on Friday, "We've gotten to a point where healthcare is so inaccessible and unaffordable that people are justified in their frustrations. A Gallup poll released on Friday found that only 44% of Americans think health care in the U.S. is good or excellent. And this is down from 62% in 2010 when Obamacare was passed. Just 28% rate U.S. health insurance coverage highly. This is down 11 percentage points. Obamacare may rank as the biggest political bait and switch in history. The Wall Street Journal wrote, "Remember Barack Obama's promise that if you like your health plan and doctor, you could keep them? Sorry. How about this claim, that people with pre-existing conditions would be protected? Also not true. The biggest howler, however, was that health care would become more affordable. The Wall Street Journal reported that the law has advanced the expanding government control over insurers in return for lavishing Americans with subsidies to buy overpriced, lousy products. Now the U.S. is spending $2 trillion more on health care than in 2010, yet Americans aren't healthier. Instead of making people's habits healthier, health insurance encourages bad behavior. They promise that you can get treatment for free or at a low cost when you're sick anyway. Another problem is the access to Medicaid or to heavily regulated and subsidized plans. This makes it difficult for patients to find a doctor to treat them because Medicaid reimburses at a lower rate than what a doctor would normally get. Since Obamacare expanded eligibility for access, the situation has gotten worse. The states have attempted to reduce Medicaid program costs by lowering reimbursement rates. A 2019 study found that patients were half as likely to get a doctor appointment compared to privately insured patients before the law was passed. After Obamacare, they were less than one-third as likely to get an appointment. And for most healthy young people, health insurance doesn't mean much, except in the event of a catastrophic emergency. And that's the main point of the recent diatribe against insurance companies on social media. But Obama's law and regulations leave them no choice. The Wall Street Journal also wrote, Obamacare requires plans to cover myriad government-determined essential benefits regardless of whether people need them. It also prohibits insurers from charging higher premiums based on a patient's health risk factors and limits their ability to do so for older people. The young and healthy are thus required to subsidize their elders, while taxpayers are required to subsidize everyone on the exchanges. There are speculations that Elon Musk plans to move to Palm Beach and become President Trump's neighbor. This speculation comes because Palmer Palm Beach, which is a local media outlet in the area, claimed that Musk allegedly offered $100 million to buy a penthouse that is just a short 7-minute drive to Mar-a-Lago. The luxurious apartment was owned by Sidel Miller. Miller, who was a self-made beauty tycoon behind the brands Ardell and Matrix Essentials, died in February of this year. She bought the penthouse for a record-breaking $42 million in 2019, but now the lavish home could break another retail record if the news becomes true. It seems that FBI Director Christopher Wray is preparing to resign. The Washington Times claimed that Wray plans to resign on or before Inauguration Day. Based on reports, Senator Chuck Grassley sent Wray a letter on Monday, and he told Wray and his deputy Paul Abate to step down. Grassley allegedly wrote to Wray saying, "For the good of the country, it's time for you and your deputy to move on to the next chapter in your lives. I therefore must express my vote of no confidence in your continued leadership of the FBI." Following Wray's departure, Deputy Director Paul Abate would normally have become the acting director. Abate's original plan was to stay on until May or June to help with the transition to the next FBI director. President Trump has nominated Kash Patel to be the next FBI director. This might be why Wray is stepping aside to avoid being fired. Grassley, who will become chairman of the Judiciary Committee next month, said that Abate should go too. So Grassley's letter might change Abate's plans also. Earlier this week, in an interview on NBC News, anchor Kirsten Welker also asked President Trump if he would fire Christopher Wray.
Are you going to fire the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who you appointed?
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it. He invaded Mar-a-Lago. I'm very unhappy with the things he's done. And crime is at an all-time high. Migrants are pouring into the country that are from prisons and from mental institutions, as we've discussed. I can't say I'm thrilled. I don't want to be Joe Biden and give you an answer and then do the exact opposite.
We're going to talk about
So
that,
I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is I certainly cannot be happy with him. You take a look at what's happened. And then when I was shot in the ear, he said, "Oh, maybe it was shrapnel." Where's the shrapnel coming from? Is it coming from heaven? I don't think so. So we need somebody to straighten. I have a lot of respect for the FBI, but the FBI's respect has gone way down over the last number of years.
Don't you have to fire him in order to make room for Kash Patel if he is, in fact, confirmed?
Well, I mean, it would sort of seem pretty obvious that if Kash gets in, he's going to be taking somebody's place, right? And somebody is the man that you're talking about.
The fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria has been one of the most significant turning points in the Middle East for generations. The Assad family ruled Syria for exactly 50 years, starting with his father, Hafez. Hafez was an Air Force officer and a Ba'athist organizer. He first participated as a plotter in the 1963 military coup that brought the Syrian branch of the Ba'athist party to power. As early as 1966, during the so-called Hama riot, Hafez endorsed a view: any and all opposition would be violently crushed. Then Hafez seized full power in another coup. He brutally suppressed a Muslim Brotherhood uprising against his rule, which culminated in the Hama massacre of 1982. Prisoners were killed en masse. Muslim Brotherhood figures and their families were assassinated. Bashar initially stood out because he was not initially intended to be Hafez's successor. He was the second son and had little interest in politics. Instead, his older brother Bassel was designed as Hafez's successor. But his brother died in a car accident in 1994. At that time, Bashar was educated in England as an ophthalmologist. Later, he was recalled from London to Syria as his father's successor. Hafez himself instructed him in the exercise of power. When his father Hafez died in June of 2000, many people were optimistic with Bashar. They predicted that the British-educated ophthalmologist would have a more liberal style of governance than his father, but actually Bashar Assad fully inherited his father's views, although he is better at pretense and public relations. Assad showed progress and openness, and he seemed to want to give back to his country what his father had taken away, such as political freedom and respect for human rights. Most importantly, he allowed the media to be more open and critical even toward his own government. As a new leader, he claimed that Syria must become more modernized if it's to succeed. And many educated Syrians believed him. But only 6 months into Assad's rule, the Damascus Spring broke out. This was a period when Syrian opposition media flourished and liberal voices became more active, but the optimism of the Damascus Spring lasted only 1 year. In August of 2001, Syria began arresting those who expressed opposition. This included members of the parliament. Bashar's initial reform program promised economic change before political change and replaced unpopular state monopolies with free markets. But this was ultimately in favor of crony elites. His political doctrine, as it would emerge, was no different from his father's, a highly personalized dictatorship with power concentrated in the armed forces and intelligence agencies. Bashar al-Assad's Syria was like Gaddafi's Libya. There was a vast security apparatus everywhere. There were agents watching in markets, cab stands, and on street corners. However, he presented a different face to the West. He ran a public relations campaign that presented the young Assad family as ordinary, with his weekends spent watching screenings of Western films with his friends in his private cinema and meals in Damascus restaurants. Bashar released a number of political prisoners, mainly communists, in a 2001 presidential amnesty to show the West that Syria was changing. But in reality, the arrests had never really stopped. As many as 13,000 people were killed between 2011 and 2015 in the Sednaya prison, which is known as the human slaughterhouse. Bashar's rule would become even more horrific than his father's. But Western societies seemed oblivious or uninformed about the real situation in Syria. Vogue magazine gave a glowing account of Mrs. Assad, calling her the rose of the desert. But then, in 2011, the Arab Spring erupted, and the carefully crafted image of Bashar and his family was gone. In reality, Assad's response to the demonstrators was brutal. Security forces opened fire on the demonstrators while heavily armed pro-regime militias known as Shabaya emerged as death squads. For years, Assad has insisted that all the bloodshed is for the war on terror. This is also how he has always justified his father's brutal policies. A year later, in 2012, WikiLeaks leaked thousands of hacked emails. These emails uncovered a portion of what was really going on with Assad and his family and their contacts throughout the region. Mrs. Assad lived a lavish lifestyle, ordering expensive jewelry in Paris, and how Assad negotiated with public relations consultants were exposed. He appeared to be reforming while actually pursuing violent repression. The day-to-day violence against protesters was signed off with the personal involvement of Assad himself. One of the most brutal examples of Assad's rule was the August 21, 2013 chemical weapons attack in Goulet, which is a suburb that is east of Damascus. The opposition accused the Syrian authorities of using rockets that contained sarin gas. The attack killed hundreds of people. It became the deadliest chemical weapons attack since the Iran-Iraq War. Assad also did not hesitate to order the dropping of barrel bombs on Syrian schools and hospitals. As a result of his government's brutality, it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of people died during the conflict. Tens of thousands were tortured and killed in prisons. But now, the Assad regime has been taken down. Many have seen this as the destruction of one of the worst defense walls of Iranian and Russian influence in the Arab world. Another government that has made the people suffer greatly is the Chinese Communist Party. Syria is the centerpiece of the Chinese Communist Party's one belt and one road in the Middle East, and Syria is the country with the largest investment from the CCP. The Chinese Communist Party invested more than $5 billion in Syria before the civil war broke out. Last September, Assad visited China. The two sides upgraded their relationship to a strategic one. The Chinese Communist Party invested an additional $10 billion in Assad, and they provided another $3 billion in interest-free loans, and they forgave the debts of all previous investments. Now, of course, these investments have turned into a bubble that has dissipated with the collapse of the Assad government. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember that every like, comment, and share helps more people to see the truth. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And if you have already subscribed, we thank you. But please double check to make sure that you're still subscribed, because some of our audience have reported that they're somehow unsubscribed without their knowledge. We've also heard that some of you don't get notifications anymore of our videos on YouTube. So when you do subscribe on YouTube, please make sure to tap the notification bell as well. Okay, this is our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.